Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Dev Marketer channel. Today's video is going to be a fun and exciting one. We're going to be building a multi-authentication system in Laravel 5.4. And I think this will actually work in Laravel 5.3. Actually, yes, it will. It's going to be backward compatible with 5.3. Nothing really changed between, as far as authentication is concerned, between the two versions. So it'll work in both versions. So if you're still on an older version, it's going to work. Most likely you're going to be using a future version, and we're going to be talking about how we can build multi-authentication into it. All right, now this is something you guys have been asking for a ton. I've gotten lots of requests for this, and so I'm really excited to finally bring it to you today. To be 100% truthful, the reason I haven't done it yet is because I honestly didn't really know how to do it. It's something that I've always used a package in the past, but I'm getting so sick and tired of using packages that I decided to do it the Laravel way. I wanted to figure out how we actually use Laravel to do it, so that we don't have all the bloat of a package. But then the other problem is, like, every time Laravel updates, then we got to wait for the package to update as well. And then you're constantly, half these packages, there are so many authentication packages that get abandoned. We used to use Entrust. Well, Entrust, the Entrust plugin got abandoned at like 5.1, I think, or maybe 5.2. There was a package called Multi-Auth that worked in 5.0, and I think it got upgraded to 5.1 and then like abandoned. There's actually a couple packages out there called Multi-Auth. There is one currently that people use that's only available in 5.2. It doesn't work in 5.3. There's Laratrust, which, to Laratrust's credit, they're actually maintaining it quite well. I think it is compatible with 5.4. But again, you're always running into these problems of compatibility. And so I wanted kind of a simple, clean way. I didn't need a huge package. I want to import a whole package. If I just want a second type of user, I wanted a way to do that without having to bring in a package and learn a package and then have the facade that the package has and stuff like that. I wanted to use the Laravel facades. I wanted to use it as clean and natural to Laravel as possible. And that's what I'm going to show you guys to do today. Okay, so this is going to be use the default authentication facade, or authentication system in Laravel. We're going to extend what you do when you write PHP artisan make auth. We're extending that whole system. We're going to have two different tables, one for admins, one for users. This will work with multiple users, though. Like if you wanted 3 or 4 or 5 different types of users, you could do that. That would be a pretty edge case scenario. What I should mention before we get going is don't get confused between types of users and roles of users, okay? So if you have a user, let's call it a customer, right? And let's just call it an admin. So we got an admin user. Well, you might have a super admin that has the ability to do everything, create new admins, change every setting in the book, issue refunds or something like that. Below them, you might have like like an editor, right? And the editor can view everybody's blog posts, manage all of the media and stuff like that, but they can't create new users and they can't add plugins or something. And then below them, you might have an author who can write their own blog posts, but can't, see everyone else's blog posts or something like that. Those are user roles, okay? They're all admins. They're just different user roles. They have different authority levels. That is what we call user roles. That's different than what I'm talking about today. We're talking about actually building two different systems. You would not want to build a table for your super admins, another table for your editors, and then another table for your authors. You wouldn't want to do that. You would want those all in one table and then just give them different authority levels. The use case for what I'm showing you today is if you, say, have a e-commerce website. You have admins that manage the website. They're going to create users. They can create products. They can manage orders as they come in, issue refunds, right? Those are all the employees of the company or the admins. On the other side, you're going to have customers, and customers are going to have their own order history. They can view their order history. They're going to have like a wish list they can manage and stuff like that. And it's on a completely different backend interface. They've got their own interface. This basically looks like a front end interface, and that's how they manage their account basically. Whereas your admins have like a whole different interface, completely different functionality. Maybe the information you're storing in the tables for the admin is completely different information than what you would store in the customer table, okay? So that's kind of what we're doing today, is for those two different types of users completely. And of course, built into Laravel. Last thing before we get started, I want to mention this is not going to be a beginner's tutorial. you need to have at least, I'm going to explain it really well, but you need to at least have a basic understanding of how Laravel authentication works beyond just typing in PHP artisan make auth and then clicking enter and then just running migrate and it magically works. At least understand the way middleware works, the different levels of middleware that there are. Understand how we can use things like traits and class inheritance and stuff like that. You need to at least understand that to do this. This isn't going to be a completely beginner tutorial. I have a lot of other tutorials. If you are looking for complete beginners, you can check out my channel, and I've got a lot of other stuff for complete beginners. But this tutorial is not for complete beginners. Okay. Also, the link for this for GitHub is going to be down below because that's always requested. Everyone always wants to know. So in the description, make sure to follow up in the description. If I have any updates for this video, if anything changes with the code base or there's a newer version of this video, there will always be a link to that in the description. So check the link in the description if you feel like this video is outdated. I'll try to keep it up to date, and I'll link to the new updated videos in the description because I can't change the video, but I can change the description. Also, I'll have a link for the GitHub in the description on where you can follow along or get the code or whatever. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on this. I've gone ahead and created a brand new fresh project, okay? This is a 100% fresh project called multi-auth is what I named it. And this is just your default thing. I committed it to Git just so we can see all the new files as we make them and stuff. But otherwise, it's a fresh install. There's nothing new here, just a new Laravel application, okay? So what I wanna do is show you guys how from a new application you would do it. I wanna make sure there's nothing else like contaminating our project or anything that might confuse you guys or something that you don't expect. So the first thing I wanna do is we're gonna go through and actually just generate the PHP artisan make auth command. This is gonna create the authentication scaffolding for the user. And then we'll have the user will basically be done. We could go ahead and start creating users and everything right out of the box. You guys know that, right? What you want is you want to create a different type of user and then start working with that. So let's start by just doing the scaffolding, and then we'll move on and make the second type of user. Now in this tutorial, I'm going to call it admins. And that's going to be basically like our employee type. And then users is going to be for like our customers, our front end sort of customer type of thing. Okay, so let's just go over to the terminal here. And inside of our multi-auth folder, we're going to run our command, PHP artisan make auth, like that. Generated our scaffolding correctly, nice. You can see now we got some new files. So it creates automatically the home controller with the middleware. We're going to learn a little bit more about this as we go on. And then it creates a couple views for us, and then the routes adds this routing. Okay, pretty basic stuff. Of course, none of it's complete until you run these migrations, but I'm not going to run the migrations just yet because this only creates a users table, right? Well, we also need to create another table to store our new type of user, which is going to be admins. So let's go ahead, let's create a migration for that, and then we'll run the migrations at that point. So back to our terminal, let's do PHP artisan make migration. And we're going to call this create admins table. And I'm going to use a flag. You don't need to, but it makes it a lot easier. I'm going to use a new flag called create and then just set it equal to the table name that I'm going to create. So I'm going to create a table called admins. It creates a table called admins, or it sets that up in the migration. So it makes our job a little bit easier. It kind of gets the migration going for us. I'm going to go ahead and click enter. You can see it creates the new migration for us. And now that should be available in our migrations folder. If we open it up, you can see what that create flag does. It sets up our schema creates a table called admins, drops a table called admins, sets up our increments and our timestamps. Cool. Okay, so now we can put whatever information we want to store for our admins. We could obviously put in here, run the migration, and get that in the table. So you can do whatever you want here. What I'm going to do for the tutorial is just copy what's in the users table. So I'm just going to come over to the user migration here. We already have the increments and the timestamps, so I'm just going to copy what's in the middle right here. So just copy this, come down here, and we're going to paste it like that. All right, so this brings in a name field, email, password. You're going to want to make sure you have at least one field that's unique. This is your unique identifier. And this doesn't have to be email. If you want this to be username or employee ID or whatever. You can customize that. Just keep in mind what you name the column. And as we go throughout the tutorial, I'll tell you guys basically where you want to change things. So I'm going to be using email as our unique identifier. But if you wanted to use something else, I'll tell you guys where to change it as necessary, okay? But it's not very many places. It's pretty easy. Just make sure whatever your unique identifier is, that it's, there's a unique index for it. That's everything you need. And of course, you can add more information that you need. So if you were storing, for example, like string the job title, let's call it title. Well, we'll call it job title. I don't know. Let's say that was important for you, for your admins. You needed to store the job title just to make it a little different than users, I guess. We'll store that in here. And that's all you need to do for your migrations. And then we can run the migrations. So let's just run them real quick. PHP artisan migrate. What did I do wrong? Unknown database multi-auth. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you got to have a database. So I forgot to do that. Let's make sure you have a database. So come in here, click connect. Let's make a database. I'm going to call it multi-auth. Okay, now we want to go into our env file and just edit our env file. So let's give our database name multi-auth. And then let's, the password is going to be root for my computer, and then just an empty password there. Okay, so that's all we need to do for our configuration. Okay, now we should be able to run this. So let's go through and run it again. There we go, and it ran all of our migrations. So now in our table, I've closed it, of course. Let's run it, look at it again. So now we got our admin table here. We have our job title, and then we've got our users table here, slightly different. But again, the important thing is to have a unique identifier, a password field, and then you want this remember token. And I should have mentioned also, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but there is this field called remember token, and this is just a default that Laravel has that will set that up appropriately. So just make sure you have this remember token field in here, and then Laravel will just handle it automatically. You don't need to worry about it. Okay, so now that we got this, note that we added a new job title column in here, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to go through and make our model, okay? So we already have a model in our app for users, okay? And this is our normal customer. And now we need one to manage our admins. So what I recommend doing is instead of using the artisan commands to generate a model, what that's going to do is just create an empty model, and it's not what you really need. What you need is this authenticatable model. All right, so what I recommend doing is just taking your user model, and then we're going to duplicate this file, and I'm going to call it admin. And then we're going to use this, because it's all the same stuff, we're just going to use this as our admin model. So make sure you change the name to admin. Everything else should be the same. Notice up here we import notifiable, and then we'd say use notifiable. What this means is if you've ever used the notifications system in Laravel, where you can basically just define a notification like a Slack or a HipChat notification or a text message or whatever, just using that notifications quick hand. The way it works, you just say, hey, notifications, and then you give it the notification, and it automatically determines the user based on the user object. It determines who to send it to and how to send it. Well, that's because you're normally using users, and users inherits all this notifiable trait. So if you want that ability, then you need to have that as well. So now both your admins and your users can take advantage of notifications natively. And this is some of the advantage of using the native authentication system instead of a plugin, is we get access to all of this. And if things like notifications gets updated, the notification system or anything like that, you automatically get all that functionality. It's not broken when you upgrade. Okay, that's why I love using the built-in functionality instead of trying to use some sort of package. Okay, so there we go. We've got that. That's what notifiable means. Then down here, you'll see it uses Foundation Auth user, imports it as authenticatable, and that's what we're extending. This is our base model for authenticatable users, okay? If you actually followed this and looked at the source code, what you'll find is that it itself extends the model. So you're getting all of your model, normally you'd see this, extends model. Well, that already happens behind the scenes with this. So this basically builds on top of the model. Okay, so you get all the authentication stuff and the model together, and that's what you get there. Okay, now down here, you've got your fillable array and your hidden array. So because we're in admin now, we had that new item job title. You're gonna wanna add job title here just so that you can mass assign that. So everything here in this fillable array is mass assignable. So obviously if you have something that you don't want mass assignable, like authority level, if you had an authority level field, you obviously wouldn't want that to be mass assignable. So don't put it in there, okay? And then if you need anything hidden from the collection or the array, you would just put it in here so it doesn't get thrown in with all the other stuff. You can just keep adding new items here, whatever's needed for your user. And that's it. So now we've got a table to store our admins. We've got a model that manages our admins. Now what we need to do is just set up our guard and we're done, basically. So let's do it. So to configure our authentication settings, all of that is handled inside of a config file called config auth, obviously. Okay. Inside of here, if you've never been in here, I'll just kind of go through everything really quick. You can see we have a default for our authentication. And what this means is, this is something that a lot of people don't understand, but Laravel has multiple ways to log people in. So we call each of these guards. So by default, you have a users guard, which is actually, or the web guard, which is for your users. And that's kind of like defined for everyone doing like HTTP, you know, on the actually looking at a computer type of authentication. And then the other type of authentication you have is an API guard. Okay, and you can define all these guards. You can see the default one here is web, and you see what all the guards are down here. So here's the web guard, and here's the API guard. Okay, so you can define as many of these as you want, and that's what we're going to be doing today, is adding more guards and tying it to the model we just created, so we can take advantage of everything natively. Okay, and that's what's awesome about Laravel, is you actually can add as many of these guards as you need. Now by default, if you don't specify a guard, then you need to set a default that it uses if you don't specify it. So what I mean by this is, in your application, you can do commands like auth check, and then you can check if somebody, you put in their credentials here, an array of all their credentials, like you need to put their email and their password or whatever, and then this will come back true or false if they're authenticated. Well, you didn't specify the guard, so what it's going to do is it's going to use the default here, so the web guard. Okay, and the web guard is defined here. It uses your user's provider. I'll explain that here in a second. We also have attempt to try to log people in. You can do once to log someone in for one HTTP request. There's different commands with this auth that you can do that are all native, but if you don't specify a guard, it by default uses whatever you specify up here. So if you wanted the admins to be the default, then you would change it up here in the default. All right. But it really doesn't matter. I usually just keep it as users, and then my admins or employees, you can always specify, because what we're going to do here after we set this up, you'll be able to specify this. So you can do guard admins or admin. So now you're saying you're authenticating against the admins instead of the users. Does that make sense? And then you can say once, or you can do attempt, or you can do whatever, check, like that. Okay? So this gives you all that functionality with the authentication facade. So that's what we're defining up here, is whatever the default is going to be. If no guard gets specified, then it's going to by default use the web guard. And the web guard, as defined down here, is going to be tracked using session, which means there's two different ways to track basically session and token. So token's best for APIs. Session is for web interfaces usually. Session uses cookies and storage. And then token uses obviously an API token, all right, that you'll have to pass every time you want to do something. That's pretty common when you're doing API requests. You normally pass in a token, would be one of the parameters that you pass in the headers or something. So you're going to use that token to authenticate somebody. But when you're on the internet, you want to make it as easy as possible. When I say the internet, when you're on through the browser, basically, you want to make it as easy as possible. So we use things like cookies and storage to track users between each request. And that's what session means, okay? So that's what driver means. So if you're using the web guard, you're saying use the session driver. With the API guard, we use the token driver. And then you can see the provider for each of these is users and users. So these are both defining the user's provider. Well, what is a provider? Okay, well, the providers are defined down here. So you can see we only have one provider, and it's a user's provider. And what the provider does is it tells it how to talk basically with back and forth with the database. So there's two different drivers we can use to talk back and forth to the database. There's Eloquent, you're familiar with that. That's the ORM. And then that's the easiest way I recommend. And then there's an example down here, actually, if you uncomment this. There's also a database driver. So if you just want to use database, we'll just use the query builder. And that's all behind the scenes. So technically, for the most part, unless you're building custom queries with this guard, you usually don't need to worry about it. But that's what's happening behind the scenes, is it's either using the query builder or it's using Eloquent. All right, now we don't need this, so let's go ahead and comment that out. Notice that if you use the database driver, then the second parameter you need to note is the table. Whereas if you use the Eloquent driver, you note the model. Got it? Okay, so we're going to be using Eloquent for our second one. We're going to configure a new provider for admins so that it knows how to talk to the admins database. All right, so we're going to set that up here. We're going to set admins. We're going to use the Eloquent driver. And then for our model, we're going to use app admin and then admin class, right? So this ties in with this app admin class up here. So if you namespaced your whole app, just make sure you change that. And then whatever you name your model, make sure you change that here. Got it? Pretty easy. So now we have access to two providers. So you could change the web to be admins by default, or you could just create another guard, which is what we're going to do. Let's just go ahead and copy this web one, paste, and we're going to call this admin. And now we have an admin guard. And we're going to use the session driver because this is for the browser. And then the provider links to one of the providers down here. We're going to use admins. Got it? So there we go. So now we have three of these. And if you wanted to set up a guard for the admin API, like if you wanted the admins to be able to go in with an API as well, then you could just create another one. I would just do this. In fact, we'll just do it. There's no harm in it. We're kind of prepared. We'll just do admin API, and then we'll just set this to token, and then this to admins. Okay, so now we have access. We have a tokenized way to authenticate, and then we have a browser-based way to authenticate, like that. Cool. So that's everything we need for guards. And actually, with this, you're basically done. There's one last thing we need to do. Actually, before we go to there, let's also talk about passwords. You noticed when I set up the migrations, we didn't create a migration for password resets. And that's obviously because we already have a password resets table, right? Well, with the password resets table, we actually can share it across multiple guards or multiple models. And so we don't need to have a different password resets table for every single user model in here. We can actually just share the exact same one. And so the way you do that is you configure all of the different types of password resets you can do down here. So for an example, we'll just do admins, and then we'll say the provider is admins. So that ties in up here. And then the table is password resets, and then the expiration is 60 minutes or an hour. If you wanted admins to be only 15 minutes, you can define that here, and now admins are basically a little more secure. All right, so just to recap, remember, you can configure your default here. In this case, default is users, and this also says the default password. So if you're doing a password reset and you don't specify which password reset provider to use, then it will by default use the users. It'll assume users. But we can also define different types of password resets, and we'll do that in a later video. Okay, so these are your defaults. These are your guards. You can do as many guards as you want. You can tie them to as many providers or drivers as you want. And then down here is where you set up your providers, and providers basically tie, it's basically a shortcut where you can define the driver and model or table to use for this. So we're saying to use the admin model. The last thing we need to do though to make this work, since we're pointing to the admin model, we need to make sure that the admin model is expecting or knows which guard to work back with. And so we need to configure that guard in the admin model. So let's go over there and do that. We go to admin.php, and up here at the top or wherever, just set up another protected attribute, and we're going to call it guard. And then we're going to set it equal to admin. All right, admin. Make sure it defines this guard right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and click that, click enter, and we've gone ahead and saved it. So now we're actually good to go. Everything is going to work as intended now. We actually have access now to multiple different types of users. So let's go ahead and just try it out really quick before we finish the video. What we're going to do is, let's go take a look at our routes file. Let's create a route that we can, and we're going to add middleware to this route and allow only admins to access it. So I'm going to make this admin we're going to put it into, we'll just do home, well, no, home controller is, let's create another controller called admin controller. And then, let's see, that's basically it. Let's go back to our controllers here. Let's just duplicate this home controller, call it admin controller. And then let's just define it up here. Like that, admin controller, let's see, everything looks good. You'll notice that this controller is tied to this middleware. So it's the authentication middleware. We'll show that here in a second. And let's just tie it to another view. We're gonna make a view real quick. So we'll go to resources, views. Let's just make a new view in here. New file. Actually, forget the new file. Let's just duplicate this home file. And we're gonna call this admin.blade.php. And then let's just define a few things here. So we're gonna say admin dashboard, and you are logged in as admin. Okay, so this is our admin dashboard. And then for our normal dashboard, we're gonna say you're logged in as strong users. Okay, so now we can kind of tell which view we're looking at when we're on the front page. Okay, so just to recap, we basically created a route called /admin. And then we're going to tie this now. Eventually, we're going to tie this here to the middleware so that only admins have access to this page and only users have access to that page. Okay, that's the goal. Now, if we go there right now, what you'll see is, let's just refresh here. Let's register a new user. So we're going to say Alex Curtis, Alex at example.com. Okay, and register. Okay, so now we're in the user dashboard. We're logged in as a user, right? So let's try to go to home, admin. All right, well, now we have access to the admin dashboard as a user. So not exactly the functionality I promised, right? Well, that's just because if we go to our admin, let's close some of these. If we go to our admin controller now, you can see that this is tied by the authentication middleware. What did I say about the authentication middleware? Remember when we were looking at the defaults? If you don't specify a guard, then it's going to default to whatever your default is. In our case, the default is just web, which web is really just users, okay? So this is by default allowing any users to come in. So what we need to do is with our middleware, we need to define the guard that we want to protect against. In this case, we want to do the admin guard. So what we're going to do is we're going to do colon, and whatever we do after the colon is going to be our guard. So in this case, we say auth admin, and that is going to say use the admin guard, but not the user's guard or any of the other guards that we have. Okay, so it only allows people with the admin guard in. Got it? So now let's go back to our project. Let's refresh. We're still technically logged in because this is the same session. So if I refresh, you can see it redirects us to the user dashboard. And if I try to type admin now, every time I type the admin, it redirects us to the user dashboard. Okay, because what's actually happening behind the scenes is it's going to the admin, this auth admin. They're not logged in, so it's logging them. It's actually redirecting them to the /login page. And then the /login page is only for guests. And because they're logged in, it's then redirecting them to the home page. That's actually what's happening. So we're going to talk about how to customize those redirects in the next video. But well, we're going to do it in the video after that, probably the middleware video. So the next video, if you guys want to learn how to customize logins, I'm going to go over that in the next video. That does require a little bit of custom functionality. We're going to basically do a custom authentication login type thing. And I'm going to show you guys how to do that in the next video if you guys want to go over there and watch that. The video after that's going to go over customizing middleware a little bit so that we can set, where it's redirecting to and different things like that to really get at the functionality that I would normally expect with this. But you can see that out of the box, we have that ability to we have, if you currently have users and you can log in a user, then you have access and it's protecting them against those different types of guards. So now if we try to go to home because we're logged out, it won't let us, right? It tries to log us in. The only problem we have right now is that the login page is only tied to the users. So you need to create another login page and then have it log in to the admins so that your admins can log in. And that's what we'll be doing in the next video if you want to go watch that. But that's basically it. So if you've experienced enough with Laravel, you probably don't need to watch that video. You can probably connect the dots and just figure it out yourself. But if you do want to learn how to do that, I've got that available in the video coming up next. Okay? hopefully you guys found that informative. I know this is something that a lot of people have been looking for, and I wanted to show how it works, okay? So this is definitely how you can tie this together, and I know this is only the beginning, and it's because the other parts, you know, all add to the length of the video. So this is a good 30-minute video. I'm gonna end this here, and then if you want to skip to if you wanna watch the other 2 videos, or I guess there'll be 3 more videos. Then the 4th video is going to be about forgot my password functionality. So I'll talk about how to customize that for multiple guards. The next video will be the different logins. The video after that will be the different middlewares. And then the video after that will be the different forget my passwords. And that will basically sum up everything you need to do for multiple authentication. If you found this video informative, please, please, please subscribe if you're not subscribed already. I really, really appreciate it. You can see more videos like this. I do tons of videos on Laravel, on Vue.js, and stuff like that. So if you found it interesting and informative, please, please make sure you subscribe. Give it a thumbs up as well if it really helped you out. It's the least you can do. I'm not asking for money, just asking for a thumbs up. Pretty easy stuff, and just helps more and more people find the video. And then last but not least, make sure you see the other videos. If you guys have any questions, you can always try to email me. I'm not the best with email because I get so many emails, but I do read them all. And I try to respond to them if I have time. My email is down in the description. You can also follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is _JACurtis, JACURTIS. Tweet me there, and I always respond on Twitter, okay? So I'll definitely get you a response on Twitter. If you found this informative and you finally understand multi-auth, make sure to tell me about it. Just hit me up on Twitter and tell me I finally understand multiple authentication. If you found this informative and you've been looking for something about multiple authentication, if you guys are looking for the write-up of this, I know everyone's going to want a write-up, and so I am writing a blog post for it, and the link for the written description on how to do all of these steps, it was hard to follow on the video. I'll have everything with all the code snippets down in the description below. There's also a link to where you can find this on GitHub. You can download it if that's helpful for you, or you can go through the files over there. So I've got written description, or in the description below, we've got the written tutorial and we've got the GitHub link. And that's basically it. So if you finally understand multiple authentication, multi-user authentication, I'd love if you guys told me about it. Hit me up on Twitter. You can just say, hey, I finally understand multiple user authentication. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. I usually retweet them too, or like them or whatever. And it just makes my day. So anyway, that's all I got for you guys in this video. The next video, we're going to go over login. The video after that, middleware. The one after that, forget my password. So if you want to skip to any of those videos, skip over one that you don't need, whatever, just do what you got to do. Thanks so much for tuning in. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next video.